question, although it takes me to another point. There wasn't supposed to be any people in here. That was the rule. But some actually did get in there and make a point in American history. So that's a good guess. It wasn't it. This actually was supposed to be clear. Okay, because were they at the end of this thing? What's over here? No, what's right here? Yeah, they're going to pull on the freeway to get on Stemmons Freeway, which is going to take him where? Directly to the Trade Mart. I mean, they are within a couple hundred yards of being free as a bird. So why didn't they just go on Main Street? Why did they take this turn? Because when they took this turn right here, it slowed the presidential limousine down to 11 miles an hour, which was well below the service safety code.
Is there more people?
No? What do you think? Well, it's just a guess. I'm not saying you should know it. When they went down Main Street, how were they going to get on the interstate? Yeah, the ramp was on Elm Street. Otherwise, they would have had to jump over. And I'm going to show you these on pictures. They would have to jump over curbs to get onto the interstate. Well, that wouldn't look very presidential, would it? Take the presidential limousine. I mean, they're probably, this high. I'll show you pictures of them. I was there last summer. When you come out of this area right here is called the Triple Underpass. And they're, Commerce Street comes through, Main Street comes through, and Elm Street comes through. These two go to the interstate as well, but this one is the exit to Stemmons Freeway. So when you keep going straight, you're not on Stemmons Freeway, you're on a different freeway. You have to go to the right to get on Stemmons, which takes them to the Trade Mart. So they're not going to hop over these things, okay? So, after traveling 1 block, the presidential motorcade was scheduled to make a left turn onto Elm Street. The turn on Elm Street would make it much more convenient to catch the Stemmons Freeway exit that would take the president to the Trade Mart. So the motorcade continues down Houston Street and then makes the 120-degree left turn onto Elm. And again, it slows the president's motorcade down to 11 miles an hour, which is well below Secret Service safety code. But it had to be done. So the motorcade then continues down Elm Street, and if you look off to the right, you'll see a grassy incline, okay? And if you look on this picture I gave you instead of the map, you'll see right here this area where this little deal is. Let me where I'm at here. Yep, this deal right here is, and this area right here around this little decorative area is called the grassy knoll. Becomes known as the famous grassy knoll because there's going to be people standing on that grassy knoll watching the president come by and go from there. So we've come down Main Street, we've come down to Houston Street, we made the turn on Houston Street, driven in front of the Dallas County Courthouse when Mrs. Connolly makes her comment to the president. They continue down, they make a 120-degree turn left, sharp turn left onto Elm, slowing the limousine down to 11 miles an hour, and they head to a grassy area that goes down in history known as the Grassy Knoll. Okay? That's where we're going to stop today, and I'm going to show you a video entitled JFK 24 Hours to Live, which talks about all these things we've talked about up to his assassination. Okay? And I think you'll enjoy it. We're going to watch it today, and we'll watch it part of Monday. Now I want you to have your notebooks open, and I want you to make sure that you're not missing any of this stuff, because this is going to follow the same timeline and guideline, and the only thing is you're going to get to see it instead of me telling you about it. I want to make sure you have it in your notes. Which one did you miss? I'm going to give you that before we leave, so don't let me forget that. Okay, this is very, very good. I think you'll enjoy this, and I think it'll really tie into what we've done here. So, Mary, if you'd be kind enough to get the lights for me, my dear. Again, I want you to follow along in your notes and make sure you have these things, and so we don't have any three-ring binder busts. So what are we going to talk about Monday, do you think? The assassination, yeah?
I thought Monday we were turning in 3 good steps and eating cake.
No, that's going to be actually Wednesday. Tuesday. I changed it to Tuesday because it's a shortened schedule. Okay, let's explain that. Monday, lecture, turn in all your money. Tuesday, cake and continue class. Wednesday, short period, we're going to draw the winners. That's what we're doing. Then we're going to eat turkey the next day. This is a great quote right here. I want you to look at it. That's going to come back to us. The courage of life is often a less dramatic spectacle than courage of a final moment, but it is no less a magnificent mixture of triumph and tragedy. We're going to come back to that later in the lecture.
Jim Wright, Governor, Senator Yarborough, Rothwell, ladies and gentlemen, there are no faint hearts or words.
I was just there this summer.
This morning, Mrs. Kennedy is organizing herself. It takes longer. But of course she looks better than we do, which she doesn't. This city's been a great western city. The defense of the West, cattle, oil, and all the rest. It has believed in the strength of this city.
Okay, just so you know, Johnson, Connolly, Kennedy, Yarborough.
Is that in the parking lot?
This is in the parking lot at Fort Worth. Very good, yep.
Strength of this state and strength of this country.
It was rainy that morning, but nobody cared. You see, it wasn't every day you got to see President Kennedy. The crowd was big, too big to get a good view.
Anybody recognize this voice? Actor by the name of Bill Paxton. You ever heard of him? He was actually there that day.
But some folks got lucky. For instance, this 8-year-old kid who managed to perch on his father's shoulders. That's me 50 years ago. What we didn't know was that President Kennedy was going to die in just a few hours.
Thank you.
We all know how it ended.
We could hear the crowd noises as the motorcade approached and came down Main Street and turned onto Houston, and that's how we knew that the motorcade was coming. In my viewfinder, I saw Jackie Kennedy looking directly at me with her bright smile and pillbox hat. She was beautiful. I continued filming until the motorcade began to disappear into the crowd as it turned the corner.
Based on everything that occurred that day, November 22nd, the weather, the angle, the location, the fact that we were about to enter a freeway, everything put together. There was not much, if anything, that we could have done differently than what we did.
Clint Hill leapt into history that day, but he could not get there fast enough.
When I got up on the car, Mrs. Kennedy then came up on the trunk. I got a hold of her and put her in the back seat. When I did that, he fell into her lap, but the right side of his face was up. I could see his eyes were fixed. I could see into the skull. There was a hole in his skull. And you could see that part of the brain was gone. It wasn't even there. So I just turned and gave a thumbs down to the follow-up car crew because I thought it was a fatal wound. He was dead.
The novelist Don DeLillo referred to the Kennedy assassination as the 7 seconds that broke the back of the American century. Now, what happened during those 7 seconds has been debated for 50 years and will probably continue to be debated for another 350 years. But there's no debate about what happened to President Kennedy during the 24 hours previous to his arrival in Dallas, and those 24 hours are absolutely fascinating.
It is often forgotten those 24 hours in Texas before the assassination were a time of great celebration, where a lot of Americans got to show their appreciation for the most famous couple in the world. It was a moment nobody who was there will ever forget, especially the lucky few who got to meet them.
It was probably the one moment in my life that carries kind of a weight and importance more than any other.
I couldn't believe it, no lo creo, I couldn't believe it, what happened. Oh my goodness, how beautiful they were. They glow, they glow.
She often looked like something out of a mythological story or something. And he is standing there looking like the all-American boy.
I couldn't take my eyes off of him. His hair was so soft. It a little bit.
I think we were all in love with President Kennedy.
All right, one thing we're not going to do is make fun of the aging process here. We all look different, but I think the thing that's kind of cool is these people, you know, this is 50-some years later, so don't let the shock value figure, but think about how much they're remembering.
When you look at those films and photos of President Kennedy and Jackie in those last 24 hours, you see a different kind of John F.
I got to interrupt again. Gary Mack was a good friend of mine. He's the curator of the Sixth Floor Museum. He just recently passed away of cancer. That no one in this world knows more about the Kennedy assassination and all the things that led up to it and afterwards than this guy. This guy was an amazing man. And when I took kids to Dallas in the old days, he would sit and meet with our class, and really felt bad. The poor guy died. And I'll tell you what, he took a lot of history with him.
Kennedy. You see a man who, yes, he's still a politician, but somehow he seems more human, more detached from his role as president. And he's just a dad. That's what some people miss.
The Texas trip began with tears.
On November 21st, we were scheduled to leave the White House around 10:30. The president had an appointment that morning in his office, and he came down and he said, I want you to know that John is going to accompany us on a helicopter to Andrews Air Force Base. We got to Andrews. John was told, goodbye, we'll see you when we come back. And he realized he wasn't going on Air Force One. He was going to have to go back to the White House. And he started to cry. And so they tried to console him, and they told him they'd be back to celebrate his birthday, which was going to be that following Monday, November 25th. But he was not able to be consoled. He kept crying. And then we boarded Air Force One and took off for San Antonio.
It's important to remember that Kennedy was already running for re-election. He was in trouble politically. A win in the election season was by no means a foregone conclusion. Taking 3 days to go to Texas was not a luxury. It was a political necessity. But Kennedy was traveling into hostile territory, and he and his advisors knew it.
The state of Texas was deeply divided in the Democratic Party between the liberals, represented by Senator Ralph Yarborough, and the conservatives, represented by Texas Governor John Connally. Kennedy needed to bring these two sides together if he wanted to get the electoral votes that Texas offered.
There was a lot of right-wing talk there. There were people in Dallas that did not want the president to come there.
She talked to me about it. She asked me about my opinion. Was this a very risky trip? Should she go? And I explained to her that we had no intelligence data, no intelligence information that would indicate there was any more of a threat or a problem in Texas than there was in any other area in the South.
Political expedience overruled any security concerns, and a 2-day tour was scheduled. The itinerary was packed. 5 cities would be visited, starting with San Antonio. Later that same day, the president would visit Houston, and then Fort Worth. The next day, Dallas and Austin. Kennedy brought a not-so-secret weapon along for the trip.
When President Kennedy would travel somewhere, he would get 100,000
Well, when Mrs. Kennedy came along, the crowds would double. There'd be 200,000 people. And he realized this, and he had asked her if she would help him with the campaign of 1964.
Clint Hill was beside the First Lady from the beginning to the end of the Texas trip.
So let me just, you can roll, okay? So we're slating, this is San Antonio, and I'm starting to roll now.
Air Force One, this is our arrival in San Antonio. Here you see President and Mrs. Kennedy. There's Congressman Gonzalez immediately behind him. He's a local representative. Those are other representatives behind them.
He and my husband were very close. He used to say that Henry was his big brother.
Bertha Gonzalez and 4 of her 8 children were there to meet them. When the president reached Bertha, he gave her a special greeting.
He did like that to me, and he said, "Happy birthday, Bertha." And I thought he was going to shake hands. I said, "Thank you." But when I said thank you, he got like that and gave me a kiss.
There were more than just politicians and their families waiting for the first couple that afternoon. There was the presidential limousine that 24 hours later would become a hearse.
This is the car in which President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. It's important to preserve this presidential limousine because history happened in this back seat. This limo was equipped with 2 different removable tops. One was a solid black steel, and the other was transparent plastic. And these different roofs were put together in separate sections, so you could put them on the car if you needed to protect the president from inclement weather.
The SS-100X always had a Secret Service driver and then a Secret Service agent in the passenger seat, in the front seat. The car itself had handholds on the trunk for the agents like myself to grab onto, to hold onto if we were on the rear of the car, and platforms built into the side of the car and the rear of the car, so that we could stand there in parade situations if necessary. There's always been some allegations about why the agents weren't up on the rear of the car in Dallas. Well, that was simply because the president didn't want them there. And so when we got to Texas, when it was not really necessary, we stayed off the back of the car. Governor and Mrs. Connolly had already seated themselves in the car. I am now alongside of the left side of the car, and we're preparing to travel into the city of San Antonio.
It's interesting that in the New York Times that was printed that Friday morning, an article described twice that President Kennedy was riding in an open car. Somehow that small detail stuck out in their mind, and they found it worth repeating.
John Fitzgerald Kennedy has 23 hours to live.
Okay,
This program
this is really good, and it'll take you through everything we talked about up to the last lecture note I gave you. We'll continue this on Monday. It'll probably take a period Monday. If you want me to give you these written assignments today and have them due Monday, or do you want me to give them to you Monday and go ahead and the weekend and we'll turn them in before we leave Wednesday? Okay, that's what we'll do. All right? That's what we'll do. Give you a little less to worry about over the weekend. Keep your hand out, so we're going to need these throughout. So.
That's good.
Adrian is over there making fun of old people.
What?
Were you making fun of old people?
No, she said, I think we're all in love with Kennedy, and I turned to Aubrey and I was like, aren't we all?
Yeah.
Is she wearing Did you do it on purpose?
She wore the same, did you see she wore the same thing? And they'll do that, you wait, it's pretty, when they do the crowd in Fort Worth, there'll be all kinds of people that were there that they're gonna interview 50 years later. It's pretty cool to show you. Oh, just to show what she had on there. But yeah, they say that he was a big deal. I hope you have a good weekend. Weather's supposed to be better, isn't it? We're gonna have Cake Tuesday, kids, Cake Tuesday.
Rudolph and Red. Oh, thank you. I'm so excited for this. 97, 96. I'm sorry. That picture looks so good. This is where Facebook is. Is that on? Has the red dot.
On Fridays, we always eat.
Teachers, it is now 12:05. I will be doing eligibility. Also, wrestlers, please remember to meet